Hello everyone and welcome back to another mini art history lecture. So I am currently in Los Angeles, which is not where I'm originally from, for an internship, and I'm so excited because I'm sure as you know, Los Angeles is a huge urban magnet for incredible exhibits and arts and culture and entertainment, and I'm so excited to go find time outside of work to go see all these, I'm sure, incredible exhibitions and galleries. And I'm also super excited because my work actually pertains a little bit to art history, although it's more pertaining to my current major, political economy, but it does have a little aspect of art history which I would love to make a video about at towards the end of summer if I found the time. So that would be really exciting. I also am super excited. I guess the only downside about Los Angeles museums is that they can be really pricey even with a student discount. And it's really ironic because the Broad in LA is actually currently doing an exhibit on Keith Haring. And if you don't know who Keith Haring is, he is a really prominent figure in the neo-graffiti movement, which happened in the 60s. And the whole basis for his art and why he's so famous is because he wanted to show everyone that art is for everyone, no matter what social class, what background, what gender, what ethnicity you considered yourself. And the thing is, the Broad is charging everyone $25 to get in and see his exhibit, which is just really weird and funny and ironic to me, so I laugh every time I see the billboard advertisement when I drive back home. But speaking of the 60s, today I will be talking about a very famous abstract expressionist artist named Helen Frankenthaler. I'm sure if you're on Pinterest or Tumblr or any artsy era of media, you have seen this image, this incredible portrait of her. And it is just her being surrounded by her work, but this is actually her, and she had a career that literally spanned 6 decades, and she is still recognized as one of the greatest American artists of the 20th century. She is a huge contributor to the history of post-war American painting, and as a member of the second generation of post-war American abstract painters, she is widely credited with playing a role of a pivoting transition from abstract expressionism to color-filled painting, which kind of get intercrossed, but I'll get more into this later. Some very highly recognized artists from this era include Warhol and Lichtenstein. And if you don't really know what the post-war era was in American art history, it was actually when America emerged from World War II. This was the time period America emerged from World War II, and a lot of the artist demographic was kind of veering towards creating work that was very European, avant-garde, inspired. So obviously right after World War II, if you don't know too much history, Europe was dealing with some very heavy financial burdens. They were struggling a lot socially, very opposed to how America was doing, because America was doing great after World War II. So this is when New York initially started becoming this internationally recognized center for arts and culture, and actually first challenged Paris, which used to be this universally known center for arts and inspiration and artists, because Europe was not doing so good. So New York and the American arts kind of started to take a step up and replace this. Abstract expressionism emerged in the 1950s, and with this came a lot of other genres such as pop, minimalism, conceptual art, and a lot of other movements that are still heavily followed today. Although these genres stemmed from post-war art eras, it's very important to recognize that post-war art is not really a style or a set of ideas, but rather just a very specific defining term for this time period. So with that background, we can finally get into Helen, and she was actually born in December 12th in 1928 and raised in New York City. She first attended Dalton, which is a very famous art school, and received her earliest art instruction from Rufino Tamayo, who was I'm sure if you are a pretty big art history fan, he's a really super well-known Mexican painter who first combined the ideas of modern European painting styles with traditional Mexican folk themes. In 1949, she graduated from Bennington College in Vermont, and I guess in the very latest part of her arts education and training, she studied with Hans Hofmann, who is still known today as a very good teacher, because so many of the artists he taught went on to make such huge names for themselves. And he was actually also someone who played a huge pivotal role in the abstract expressionist movement in America. Frankenthaler is known for producing bodies of work whose impacts on contemporary art has been profound and still continues to grow, especially in abstract expressionism. And under the umbrella of abstract expressionism, it kind of subsects into two genres. There is action painting and color field painting. Although now a lot of art critiques and historians regard Frankenthaler's work as color field, a lot of her earlier works exhibit the heavy influence of action painting, and a lot of renowned artists under action painting would include Jackson Pollock, who is recognized for very vigorous, strong, almost violent brushwork, and very messy applications of paint, which are very apparently guided by feeling and emotion. Another strong characteristic that distinguishes action painting is the use of very, very thick paint, which is pretty opposed to color. What Frankenthaler is most internationally recognized for is a technique that she actually came up with. And although there's no specific name for it, everyone just kind of recognizes it as what is called the soak stain technique. And by this, she was able to expand the possibilities of abstraction while at times referencing figuration and landscapes in very highly personal ways. These abstractions are made by staining very vibrant hues onto usually an unprimed canvas, which was really taboo in the art community. And although as recognized as she is now, a lot of art critiques, especially in the late 40s and kind of early 50s when her career was first starting out, actually critiqued her very, very heavily. Another really famous art critic, Anna Seeley, actually wrote that her paintings were very distracting and made the viewer nervous. Other critiques kind of poked a lot of fun at her work and compared her canvases to wet rags, which is really funny because that's actually how Frankenthaler came up with this technique. Because apparently as a kid living in New York's Upper East Side, she would fill the bathroom sink with cold water and pour her mother's drip red nail polish into this basin full of water. And then she would kind of just play around with it, and as the nail polish would drip, it would disperse and create very abstract forms in the water against the stark porcelain white sink. Her most famous work was actually one of her earliest ones, and it is called Mountains and Sea. And for example, in this painting, you can really clearly see her soak stain technique in this pile up of rose and cerulean colored forms, and it's kind of cast against what would be considered a dirtied background. A lot of people have noticed that her soak stain technique is very similar to Jackson Pollock's, where you kind of just put the canvas on the floor and then kind of drip paint and just have this very messy, personal, self-expressive technique of splattering the paint onto the canvas. But opposed to Pollock, who used enamel paints, which kind of remain on the surface of the canvas, usually when they dry, Frankenthaler actually used oil paints that she had thinned herself with turpentine, then kind of soaked into the turpentine, and then kind of soak it into the canvas. Although technically no obvious mountains or seas can be glimpsed in the canvas, I guess you could say it evokes kind of this essence of Frankenthaler that she glimpsed while she was on her travels or vacations or whatever naturistic landscape she saw. So she wasn't really going for accuracy, obviously, when she was making her paintings. It was more so she wanted to evoke and express how she felt when she saw these naturistic landscapes. For example, she actually commented specifically on Mountains and Sea, and she said during her process, quote, "The landscapes were in my arm as I did it," end quote. Unlike her male contemporaries of abstract expressionism, she kind of introduces this very novel form of whimsical lyricism to her paintings. And although she really always resisted to having this strong female attribute to her paintings or ever considering herself a woman painter, because, I mean, she's correct, in her eyes, there is no male or woman painter. You're all just painters. And especially on the ground, considering that artists should never be recognized for anything else besides their work. Particularly in the 1950s and 60s, a lot of critics commented on her works being very seductive and using a very deductive, feminine palette color. And this is also very similar to Georgia O'Keeffe, which I have made a video on, so go check it out. How a lot of critics always referenced her paintings back to sexuality, and just because certain colors or idealists were used in the paintings, they would always connect it back to something sexual or try to make something sexual out of it, which I'm sure was very infuriating for these female artists of their time. This is actually also when the infamous photograph portrait of her was taken by Gordon Parks in 1957. And as like I just said, I guess her work does kind of have like this feminine lyrical appeal to it, especially in the colors. But regardless, it is such a beautiful photograph taken of her, and it is very true that it should be commemorated, especially on Pinterest nowadays. So after her career has initially rocketed off, I guess Frankenthaler really heavily looked into these critiques of her work, and in the late 1950s and 60s, she actually shifted her palette to incorporate yellows, greens, and blues that weren't really in her earlier works. This is also when she shifted to using acrylic paint instead of oils, because also, this is when acrylic paint became a lot more accessible in the 60s when it first started being mass-produced. Even though she did shift her color palette a little bit, she never ever strayed from her light stains and color splashes of canvas, especially like you can see here in Canyon, which was painted in 1965. With its brilliant red wash filling out most of the canvas, and Canyon actually reflects like this very important change in her procedure and is kind of like this motif for it, because I'll do a side-by-side comparison. Compared to her earlier works with the thinned oil and with the watered-down acrylic poured in larger stains and blots, like it looks a lot more pronounced, like a lot more stronger, like kind of like the message she is trying to evoke and communicate is louder within her visual demographic. Another super famous piece that she's known for is Madame Butterfly, and although in this piece the central white shape kind of suggests like the formings of a butterfly, this print evokes rather than depicts its subject. Madame Butterfly is considered an incredibly complex work involving 106 colors, 46 woodblocks, all measuring 6 feet in length. With its huge color washes and combinations of floating forms and this overall beautiful watercolor-like effect without actually ever using watercolor, Madame Butterfly is very reminiscent of works like Mountains and Sea. Their kind of lack of illusionistic space embodies what Greenberg kind of articulates as modernist painting's logical end result. And this end result is a goal that a lot of them kind of work for, and it's to be described as a flatness of the plane and canvas. A lot of modernist artists kind of aim for this two-dimensional aspect of their works. And especially with Frankenthaler's soak stain technique, you can kind of see like her paintings are almost flattened entirely by merging the paint within the canvas by watering it down so much. And by soaking the canvas and the paint into one another, it kind of creates this entirely undifferentiated surface quality. Although her name is very synonymous to the soak stain works, Frankenthaler's work, considered as a whole, demonstrates her extreme uncanniness with abstract painting in its entirety. In her sense, she is able to encompass Americans' post-war expressionism so beautifully, especially in her own way and own painting brush techniques. She was able to so defiantly, strategically bend her own rules to define this very distinct vision that she had with her landscapes and naturistic portraits. Going back to what I said about her complaining about being recognized as this female artist, and she, again, in her whole career, always deflected these comments about her work being associated to her gender as a woman and an artist. She actually said this once, which I find so beautiful, quote, "I don't resent being a female painter. I don't exploit it. I paint." End quote. She was able to pave the way for other women artists to be actually taken more serious for their art establishment, as the Georgia O'Keeffe, like I mentioned. And like I've said many times in this video before, she was so able to defiantly leave her mark on the abstract expressionist color field movement. So yeah, let's just take a moment of silence and applaud her for these beautiful watercolor abstractions of her work. I know this video was a little bit shorter than my other ones, but I don't know, I just feel like I talk and ramble for so long. Like in my other videos, my footage, my raw unedited footage literally like adds up to be almost over an hour, sometimes over an hour. It's just so annoying to edit and have to like watch through all of it to upload these videos for you guys, and I have such a long list of artists and art I want to get to and talk about this summer, so I have to kind of cut down my videos and kind of cut the rambling so I can push out as many as I can. But don't worry, I am going to make sure that quality does not go down as quantity goes up. Quantity and quality are going to go up. Also, I feel like if my videos, these lectures, are too long, it's definitely going to deflate my attention span of my demographics, so I'm just gonna try to keep it very dense for you guys, but also a little bit short so you guys don't leave. Please don't leave me. But also, oh my gosh, thank you so much for 200 subscribers. I am so happy. This happened like 2 days ago, and I have a YouTube creator channel app. So I was like checking it one morning before I left for work, and it's at 200 subscribers, and I got so excited. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much for the sweet comments that everyone leaves behind. They are so nice. Like sometimes I just stare at them and read them like when I'm having a bad day, because just these beautiful gratuitous comments from these complete strangers who tell me that they're so appreciative and love these videos that I make. Because literally me making these videos comes purely from passion. I have no desire to be mega famous or whatever. Someone was like, "Are you trying to be the new Mina Lee?" And I was like, no, I'm just making these because I love art history and I have so much personal research done that I want a digital medium to put these out on. But I am holding myself to my promise, and I'm going to be making so many videos this summer because I will be absorbing so much inspiration from where I am right now. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video and you took something from it along with my other ones. Go watch my other ones if you haven't. But thank you so much again for watching, and thank you so much for the lovely comments, and please make sure to watch for my next one. Thank you so much. Bye.